fired for saying what was good.
Hey, this is Shango from the Shaping Fire podcast, and I got a good one here for you today. I was at the Washington Cannabis Summit a couple weeks ago, and they had an economic policy panel that focused on how legal cannabis is impacting the state as a whole. And one of the people on the panel was Toby Paterson, and he is a senior forecast analyst for the Washington State Office of Financial Management. That means that he is the guy with the crystal ball who works for the governor and gives advice. Well, Toby was not consulted when the Washington cannabis market was set up, and he just goes off during his time to speak on the panel. It's pretty incredible. He does not toe the state's normal message. He trashes the original BOTEC numbers that the entire state regulatory structure was based on. He goes on to explain that why the present assumptions are wrong as well, and he does it with this, wry sense of humor that is really rare in the bureaucracy. And I don't know why this guy isn't running the LCB. This guy is super sharp. And so I took the video I took of the panel and I focused in right on Toby. So it's a little grainy, but I just cut out everything else since we want to focus on what he has to say. And then I pulled out all the snips with him. So this is kind of like a highlights reel of Toby Paterson at the Washington Cannabis Summit from the Cannabis Alliance. So check this guy out. He's awesome.
Hi. I'm Toby Paterson. I'm a research economist at the Office of Financial Management in the state. So I'm one of 3 economists that support the governor's policy staff and other bits and pieces like the legislators and so forth. I worked for the USDA, National Agricultural Statistics Services, before I came back to Washington. I grew up here, so I was in the other Washington sweating in a tie as a statistician, counting chickens. But no turkeys, really. So my job as a research economist with I found this pretty fun, but it leads me in all sorts of different ways. I also want to thank Laura for inviting me here. And I also want to note the people here are really amazing. So you are too, Toby. Yeah. So when I went to the LCB to provide economic guidance on how to institute a working market, I indicated that the market should define itself. And I said the number of consumers was unknown. That the quantity demanded was some unknown number as well. And further, the number of producers and the volume produced was unknown. I recommended the notion that the number of producers and retailers would equilibrate as the market matures, and thus the number of licenses should not have a maximum. Just want to make that known. That's what I said. Several of the LCB constituents at the table vehemently disagreed. And I said, hey, I'm a capitalist. So the LCB hired an anti-cannabis drug policy person to guide their economic system. So in my mind, I was saying, look, a working market for cannabis and a reasonable expectation for the public is a market where consumers can buy a high-quality cannabis product that is uniform. The cannabis is pesticide-free. And the price is fair. So, in essence, an orderly, stable market that's safe, free of antitrust, and protects consumers. So what's the problem? Right. We have not recovered from the 1936 propaganda film Reefer Madness. It's just absolutely The trivial marketplace of farmers and buyers is instead a convoluted patchwork of entrepreneurs eager to create a capitalist market and crotchety men regulating based on archaic mythology and overreaching illogical reasoning. So, I'm a bit of a cynic. I'm not totally, I'm an economist. looked at this, and one of the things that always intrigues me about market failure is asymmetric information. You might remember, like, the cigarette industry used to say that cigarettes are actually good for you. They are. So I thought, okay, I'm going to look at this from purely like, what do we have here? What is provided to the public to know about this industry? So I just poked around and said, okay, well, the LCB is tasked with providing some sort of education material on marijuana, cannabis, reefer, whatever. And so I looked and I said, okay, well, I picked one subject fairly at random. I said, on their website it said, can getting high cause memory problems? And I said, okay, well, what is this? So I pressed on the link and it said, science-based information for the public. I said, okay, well, that's interesting. It's presented by the University of Washington. No offense. I went to both UW and WSU, so I have no affiliation. It was the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Institute, and it says scientists think that cannabis causes problems remembering, problems with grades, and negatively affects learning. I noticed, there's no citations whatsoever, and it says science-based right at the top. So I get a hold of them, I'm like, hey, you claim science-based, so where are the citations? And then, so they replied back, well, it was this one professor that used to be here, and he just, because he wanted a nice write-up that was easy for the public to read and digest, he just summarized it right there. And I said, okay, well, that it? And, well, the person pointed me to the National Science Foundation, or the National Academy of Science current release, maybe some of you have seen. It's like 178 pages order, but I'd already read it, and I was like, okay, well, that contradicts everything that your website says. So, what is the point? Is this education? What is it? What are you trying to do? Well, they never replied. But, so what is the purpose of the asymmetric information in this game? Who's winning? Why are the allegiances still there to this prohibition mindset? What is the purpose? And that's something that I wonder about. But I look at all sorts of markets. So the LCB adopted the same prohibition strategy as they used for alcohol. The same number of retail stores, exactly. That's how they got the 233 stores, right? Costco stole them. They're like, hey, well, we need something, right? I'm getting fired for saying all this. It's enforcement of enforcement. So the long history of prohibition has wide cultural implications. You may have heard marijuana is a very dangerous drug. Yet this hypothesis is profoundly unproven, and reality is not an impressive support of the assertion that cannabis is at all dangerous. Though the only thing I will say that cannabis is dangerous is enforcement, right? And how many people have you ever seen die from cannabis? None. But how many people have been arrested? Anyways, so what happens next? We can just see, but I will note that in Washington, the latest estimates are there are about 11,000 direct employment jobs in the cannabis industry. Though the wage rate is somewhere in the mid-$13 an hour range. So it's seemingly, I was kind of shocked it was that low. But, is the black market still there? So that's kind of, I leave you with that sort of ambiguous question. But beyond that, what's really the economic cost of prohibition? I mean, that's sort of in my mind's eye is like, why are we in this sort of lockstep of, it's not a free market at all. It's just this small microcosm of a few licenses which are given a maximum number for what reason I cannot figure out.
Todd, you mentioned you had shared your report to the LCB at a meeting, but did you share your report on the store cap, or your thoughts, or what you shared with us on the store cap? And a follow-up to that, if you don't mind, if you can provide your thoughts on how to expand access without diluting the market share of pre-existing retail licensees.
Well, I talked to the LCB a few different times, and in the first instance, that it was like at the beginning, and then another instance, it was at the 502 occurrence, and you know, I think that they'd already made their mind up, so to speak, whether I said whatever I said. Which I'm for a free market. I'm for the free market per se, but I carefully use that term. I was pressing them to let the market expand as it should in an unfettered type of way, where comers to the market can come and leavers leave as they go out of business in a functioning market. To guide the retail system, I place the idea upon, like, with entering into a medical perspective, that if you look at, like, how many places can you buy aspirin? You know, not to say that the retail establishments should be diluted that much, but there's obviously a demand for medical products that, in my mind's eye, should be more accessible than to go to one of the few stores. And I recently did a look at how far anyone in the state had to drive to get to how many people were within 20 miles of a cannabis establishment. I haven't published that data yet, but I will put that out at some point. Working with the demographics team in OFM. But I think that the market, in my mind's eye, should be a lot bigger. I think it is a lot bigger than we're seeing, and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on. So,
There you go.
was there another part of your question that I just totally avoided?
So I guess I wasn't specific enough, and if you don't mind me shouting it out, I apologize. We're at a cap of stores, and you specifically said that cap is, in other words, BS, and how do we adjust from here? We already have licensees going, we have the other issues, but if we need access, then how do we implement that? If you have an idea on that, please.
Well, I think, in my mind, it should be based, it should just be population based. And it seemed to me that it was quite simple that you look at, you just have to have some proxy of what the demand looks like. Do you do it like how many bars there are? The alcohol and marijuana, in my mind's eye, aren't even similar in any, really. But once you enter medical, then it's like how many stores you have becomes a whole other thing. And so I think we had a bunch of at the time the 502 Botec study came out, there were 470 something medical establishments paying taxes to the Department of Revenue. How a study got out that said 333, I don't know. WTF. Really. I'm not trying to.
And how they were dispersed?
Right, and how they were dispersed is sort of, I don't, that's like,
Canopy sites.
yeah, or something that had to call, I don't know. Well, that's the process. The retail licenses were,
Water.
and then the canopy size, but that's, again, I would say that would be all comers to the market. If you want to try to grow it, grow it. You live in Washington, so it's going to be expensive, and we're going to try this from Washington, I guess.
Okay, this looks like our last question.
Oh, touch the mic.
Primarily to Toby, and with respect to the notion of access to the product, I've been forecasting and estimating the size of this market since it started. And a dynamic emerged about midway through last year that was independent of the SSB 5052 implementation. And it struck me that it appeared as if a significant number of consumers that had been using the regulated system were beginning to go elsewhere. I don't know if they're stopping using or whatever, but when you look at the transactional data across time and standardize it against the population characteristics of the local areas, it's very clear that something happened about midway through, not last year, the year before, that just started kicking in bad time. Right now, I think this market is underperforming by about 20% just on a revenue basis, a transactional basis, largely driven by the lack of retail access. Even though there's 556 licenses allocated, there were fewer than 400 stores that sold more than $1,000 in product last calendar year. And it just blows my mind. And fewer than half of those have a medical certification from the Department of Health. So, from the government's perspective, from the governor's perspective, if revenue is important in this state, particularly when it's a harm reduction strategy, if you're shifting a recreational and or other use to this product, why is it acceptable that an agency of the government can use crap science, which is demonstrably just ridiculous, false, wrong, to slap on something that basically is, this is how many liquor stores we used to regulate, so that's how many cannabis stores we're going to regulate. We're staffed for that. To increase the revenue, and at the same time, while forcing medical patients and medical providers to either go into the regulated system or to recriminalize themselves, and then to basically shut off the spigot through regulation and I think punitive legislation in a few instances, so that fewer than 5% of the producers have produced medical product. Less than 1% of the product sold was medical last year. Less state sales tax. And fewer than maybe 1/5 of the access points we had at the Green Cross area are currently able to serve patients as patients. That is a broken system, in my opinion. We can make more money and we can serve the needs of the patient, public better. Do you think the governor might be interested in that?
That was a succinct version.
You're testing my ganglion matter on this one, but I think Jay is interested in the marketplace, whether he's down at this fundamental level or the micro level at this juncture. I don't know, because as I've said before, actually not here, but the entire amount of revenue to the state is dust in the wind. This industry is very small. So do they care that? They care only as much as the money goes up, right? Aerospace, they really care. Tech, they care. But no, the reality is that when they started releasing the licenses, I jokingly did a little calculation and said, well, in 11 years, they'll actually get to the 233 licenses. Well, they still aren't there, but now we can get to 530, whatever. Yeah, it's a really weird, I don't understand what they're doing with that, but I will say that it was when Portland, Oregon, made it legal to grow at home. I got on the phone with some producers. I don't know if anybody, I just called it random, sort of the guys that were in Vancouver. And I said, hey, what's going on? And a couple of them were like, well, I just lost 50% of my business that week. And so recently I was down in Portland, and one of the guys I was with came back and he goes, man, I just got an 8th for $17. And it's some of the best I've ever had. And I said, okay, cool. And he goes, that would have been $56 in Seattle, where he's from. So, luckily, nobody's bringing it back and forth.
I,
think, I mean, in my own personal opinion, take away whatever my affiliation, I think what happened to the medical industry is totally unethical and immoral.